The Buddy Martin Show is on the air. It's Florida, Georgia week.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ? I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening to you. On a Thursday edition of the Buddy Martin Show, it is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. And it's Florida, Georgia week, and this guy doesn't know it, but I'm going to answer his phone on the air, his call. He's test calling me, and he doesn't realize he is live right now. That would be Tate Casey. You didn't know you were going to be on there right now, did you, dude? I was just calling you to check your connection. I'm not getting any audio out of you, so why don't you do this? Now that I know I've got you, work on your audio, and I'll call you back at the time we were talking about 9:35. I hear nothing from you from your end. So otherwise, the picture looks good. He's our guest coming up shortly. The former tight end. He's the Gator Radio Network's Tate Casey, sideline reporter, all part of the program. Tate will catch up to you during the break, okay? All right, there's Tate. He just called me back to let me. That just goes to show you we got an active live show tonight, and that would be one of our guests. Coming up in just a moment, Laura Rutledge, arguably one of the great success stories in broadcasting from the University of Florida, on her way to further stardom. She's already a star and will be bigger. She'll join us here in just a moment. Zach Abolverdi, who is the newly promoted editor of Gator Magazine, and the guy you just saw, Tate Casey, Gator Radio Network, all joining us on the program tonight to talk about, well, what else? the game on Saturday. I can't wait to go to Jacksonville for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Now, some of you think I'm sticking it down your throats. Okay, look, I'll back off a little bit. I think that point's been made, and I think that we know what the point is here. That is that it's okay to call it that. But if the networks want to do otherwise and the schools want to, that's fine. But we've established enough this week talking to fans, media people, what have you, that it's still what it is, and that is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Program tonight, this is the Facebook Live version of the Buddy Martin Show, growing every day on so many fronts out there. Thank you to all of you who have sort of glommed on to this program now. Don't forget tomorrow, it's 11 o'clock show, 11 a.m. It'll be up there all weekend for you to watch until Saturday. We may or may not go live from Jacksonville. We don't know yet after the game. We haven't decided. We don't know the drill yet. This show is also heard on iTunes, our podcast, which many of you listen to. I want to mention again today, we've dedicated this podcast all week to this woman who's 83 and listens every week to our podcast. You can get them on iTunes. You can also get them on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Elaine McKinstry. So thank you, Elaine, for listening. Tell your friends about it, and we'll share it on Twitter and Instagram, different places where you can get this. And we're building an audience, more and more people listening to our programs via podcast, as well as you can come on here anytime on the Facebook page and get it there archived as well, along with TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, I mentioned, iTunes, etc. So we have the program out there, and you seem like you're listening to it and watching it. We appreciate that. I won't take a lot of time here before we get our first guest because I want to get to Laura. We'll talk to her earlier today. I just want to mention, I said in the precede and the tease of the show, is it possible Gator fans are actually getting a bit overconfident? That's why I said overconfident. Because as you'll see when we talk to other people on the show, Gator fans not necessarily talking smack, but extremely confident of not just playing well, but winning this game. We shall see. This is the crossroads game for Dan Mullen, for sure. So it's going to be fascinating. Obviously, SEC Nation will be there, along with ESPN Game Day. I don't know how many times has that ever happened before. I don't know. It'll be a great setting in Jacksonville at the old Gator Bowl now. TIAA is it called, whatever it's called, the Jaguars play, and so we will be there for that. So we brought that up today and talked with some friends about that. Just a couple other notes. We'll talk about this a little later in the show. The whole thing with the Devin White targeting thing still goes on. The fishing being called into question. I've got a view of that. Maybe some information you haven't heard before. We'll talk about that a little bit. And check out the vintage shirt. This is the shirt we began selling at the spring game last April, when Dan Mullen made his debut there. And it says on one sleeve, what does it say here? Mullen's inaugural season, 2012. And it says GNK, and of course it says stay loyal to the kingdom, and the back of it has the Buddy Martin Show. I went looking for my shirts today, and this is the only one left. I could not find any of them. Some people have requested them. This is going to be a collector's item because of this. Stay loyal to the kingdom, you see? Can I get it down there? Yeah, there it is. So, don't know what will happen. If you got one, you're lucky because there are no more right now. And we'll be wearing, I guess it's white out on Saturday, is my understanding. Brendan's in charge of that stuff. He's out of town. So anyway, I want to get right to the program and our guests. First, I want to tell you about a couple of people I want you to know about. One of them is Daniel L. Hightower.
No one ever plans a car accident. Having a plan after you've been in one, however, can make a world of difference. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for accident victim justice in Ocala and statewide since 1976. After meeting with Dan and his team, you'll know your case matters, that you matter, and that Dan will fight hard to get you just results. If you've been severely injured through no fault of your own by a careless or reckless driver, you need Daniel L. Hightower.
(1976). Thank you to him. I want to tell you about Renstar Medical Research. Not only is it a first-class medical facility, it also gets involved in the community in a big way. As you see, the Ocala Quarterback Club's Scott Brantley Trophy Player of the Week, Renstar Star of the Week, Corey King from Trinity Catholic High School. Every week we have this. Renstar sponsors it. Congratulations to Corey. Who, for getting me awarded. We will eventually get down to a winner for the year. We'll tell you more about that later. Meanwhile, I'm telling you about Renstar. They're proven as a high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility. They bring cutting-edge technology to trials in Ocala for things like Alzheimer's, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, along with many other conditions that affect our community. All the data they get gets sent out to biomedical companies, and the clinical research studies are regulated by the FDA. So if you'd like to be a part of those and know more about them, they're done right here in Ocala. You can call them at 352-629-5800. And if you want to know more about it, go online to www.renstar.net and find out what they mean as they say Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. All right, and let's just go ahead and say that thanks to Mark's Prime, our local restaurants in Ocala and Gainesville, for the sponsorship of this program and for the delicious meals they serve, which I try to partake of often. Mark's Prime, of course, 2 locations to serve you. One of them is in Gainesville. You can call them at 352-336-0077. In Ocala, 352-402-0097. Go online to marksprimesteakhouse.com. Check out the information. They have free valet parking there, and their goal is to give you a unique dining experience. And that includes some of the top beef, best beef, the seafood that's very fresh, the premium wines, the naturally fresh vegetables. Go try it. Take my word, you'll be glad you did. It's a great place to go for having a special event and have a unique dining experience at Mark's Prime Steakhouse and Seafood in Ocala and in Gainesville. So, all right, let's do that. All right, earlier today, we called up with, we asked permission if we could call her this. She was voted the sweetheart of GNK a long time ago, and we don't want to be sexist about it. And she said, of course. And we called up with Laura Rutledge today, who will be coming home this week. Here's what she had to offer. All right, out to our hotline right now, and to talk to the person who will be coming home this weekend. Actually, she's lived all over, and she doesn't live here anymore, but Laura Rutledge knows the turf in the state of Florida, certainly Gainesville and certainly Jacksonville, and it'll be a treat to have Laura here on Saturday for, boy, what a big day. SEC Nation, ESPN Game Day, Florida, Georgia, both ranked in the top 10. I mean, Laura, you brought all this to us?
I guess. I would actually credit Dan Mullen with bringing all this, and it is pretty special that we're seeing a Florida-Georgia game that matters this much. I'm not really sure that in my lifetime I have seen one of these games matter as much as it does, at least as it relates to this year and what could potentially happen and how this could potentially dictate the college football playoff.
Well, speaking of which, back when you were in school, Florida kind of dominated this series. And if you look at the numbers, people have this thing in their mindset. And I did Paul's show earlier in the week, and he opened the show with the famous play. We all know, I hate to mention the guy's name, Lindsey Scott. And I said to Paul, hey, Paul, what's up with that, man? The last 28 years, you know, Florida's won 21 of these games. Why do you open up with a play like that? So there's a perception that Georgia has really had the upper hand when Florida has. Like usually back in the day, it wasn't that big a rivalry because Florida usually won. But boy, it has turned into something special this weekend. Looking at this game, Laura, and you'll be there, of course, with the fellas, and it's going to be a big day. What impresses you the most about these Florida Gators, what Dan Mullen has done in building this team and coaching this team and now bringing it to a top 10 status? What is the most impressive thing you've seen?
I'm most impressed by the way that they didn't get down after that loss to Kentucky and, you know, sort of packed it in for the rest of the season like maybe we would have seen other Florida teams do. Just being completely honest, it seems like in recent years we haven't seen as much fight out of Florida as maybe we had grown accustomed to in years before that. And so this is a team that's resilient. They're a team that may not be the most talented, but certainly there's a lot of talent in this group. And I think I love the way that they've bought into what Dan Mullen is selling. You know, everything that he's done, that he's said that he was going to bring back to Gainesville, and the fun and the good football and the football that Florida fans have grown to expect and love, that's what this team is. And, you know, you could look at it more specifically and say the way that he's made Felipe Franks comfortable and the way that Felipe has been able to do enough with the offense. He'll be tested even more this week. And then defensively, I mean, Todd Grantham, I've given him a lot of credit. I can't even give him enough credit because I think what he's done in the way that he's called the defense and making the right calls at the right time has really been impressive.
You're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, we were talking earlier in the week, if you put a list, but speaking of callings, I've got one coming in now. That's probably Dan Mullen calling right there. Yeah. Hold on, Dan. I'm talking to Laura. So here's, if you took the checklist and you named several there, we've been discussing this all week long on the Florida side, and we'll talk about Georgia. The fact that the defense has been a huge surprise. Dan Mullen has crafted himself a quarterback out of this 6'6", 240-pound kid with sort of gangly and certainly under a lot of scrutiny and criticism. You take that. You also take the team building aspect of this, which is something that I think the past regimes haven't done, putting together a squad and coaching up these players at various positions, offensively and defenses, right down to the kicking, a thorough coaching job. Like you said, we could pick one of 3 or 4 things there that gotten them to 6-1 right now where they are facing the Georgia Bulldogs. And for the Georgia side of the ball, a little bit of a quarterback controversy.
Yeah, and, you know, it's interesting because, buddy, I don't think there should be a quarterback controversy. Jake Fromm is their quarterback and should be their quarterback. And, look, I know he struggled and has struggled at times throughout the season. He certainly struggled against LSU. I think a lot of that has to be given credit to LSU and the way that their defense played. I mean, Florida knows this, having played LSU and played them quite well. They're a really talented team and deserving of the ranking that they have at this point. So, for me, I still think that Jake Fromm's the right guy for that job, and I would be hesitant to be calling for a quarterback change at Georgia. A lot of Georgia fans say, oh, well, let's see Justin Fields. I mean, that's the reason why we haven't seen Justin Fields. You always have to look at these coaches and give them a little bit of credit and say they're the ones that are watching these guys in practice. They know whether or not Justin Fields truly has a grasp of the playbook. Now, look, you think about a bye week and some extra time to maybe learn some new things and to really get him comfortable. Maybe he has an expanded role, but I expect this to be all about Jake Fromm, and I do think that Justin Fields will have some packages, but I think they're going to have to be very smart about when they bring him in. Florida's going to be ready for that, and Florida's defense is going to know what to do with that. So, to me, it just isn't as much of a story as it's been made.
Good point. We all suspect we'll see Justin Fields at some point, however, a la the Tim Tebow of the back in the day of 2006, with coming out on certain plays. You've done a lot of homework, and I'm proud of you how you do your homework, and you studied these teams year round, and you followed the narrative of Dan Mullen and Florida. I'd like you just to take me through from like spring through how this team gains respect one bite at a time. Like, okay, well, they may be competitive. Okay, they could be, when they could get to a bowl game. Okay, they may be, third in the SEC, et cetera. On down each time he takes a bit of a small step, but altogether makes a big step. How have you seen among your contemporaries, your colleagues there, the respect grow for this Florida program over these past 6 months?
Yeah, I could even feel the respect brewing a little bit at SEC Media Days and just knowing that there was excitement back in Gainesville and that it felt like something was going to happen, whether it was this year, whether it was next year. And look, the jury's still a little bit out because I don't think Florida fans are satisfied until they're not only in the SEC championship game, but then competitive in the SEC championship game and then vying for a spot in the playoff. And that said, no matter what happens this year, they should still be happy with what Dan Mullen's brought to the table. And I think what we saw, from guys that are analysts on TV with me and people who know this game very well is that Florida was this question mark. And it was like everyone wanted to always sort of think about him because you kept thinking, okay, maybe there's something there. And you almost couldn't base it on what they had looked like in the past at the same positions with the same personnel because you knew that Dan Mullen was going to come in there and make massive changes and do a lot of different things with what he had to work with. And so I think the Kentucky loss certainly was a little bit of a ding to Florida's armor and to their overall shine. But then what you saw was a team that bounced back from that, and then certainly the win over LSU gained major respect, and that's why we're talking about this game, this Florida-Georgia game, being a huge one, and that's why you've got game day in town and SEC Nation in town, and all eyes are going to be on Jacksonville. It's because of the way that this Florida team bounced back. It has nothing to do really with Georgia. I mean, to be honest, Georgia's a good, talented team, and I do think that they'll have a big bounce-back game. Whether they win or not, that remains to be seen, but it's more about what Florida has done and what Dan Mullen has done, and I think that as you're talking about, those steps that he's taking, it's only going to keep growing. It's only going to keep multiplying as they continue to go along, whether it's this year or even years to come.
Yeah, Lauren Rutledge of SEC Nation and a whole lot more from the NFL down. We won't have time to read her resume tonight. She's got too much going on. But there are some side stories here to this, aside from this terrific football game, which we're all excited to see. And by the way, if you just think Dan Mullen could take one more step, because all along people say, well, they're not that good. Well, they can't. And yet each time they do it, if you play the if game and Mullen wins the game Saturday, all of a sudden you got yourself a really great candidate for Coach of the Year, not just in the SEC but in the country. So that's going to be interesting to see. But we won't get ahead of ourselves on that. But that's just another what if. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. So here's the deal. UF UCF wants to crash the party. All right. Look, I mean, I have a lot of respect for that program, and I love their passion, but in my opinion, they've stepped over the line here. Apparently, the story that they're going to organize, be there for SEC Nation too, but also Game Day, ESPN, and flash their signs. I don't know. I mean, there's got to be some semblance of common sense here prevailing. But what is going on there? Is there anything from ESPN? What do you expect? What's that like? And I know you have to be politically kind of correct on this, but to me it's tacky. So give me your thoughts about this.
I mean, look, here's the thing. I do respect their passion. I also do respect what their AD does to try to, gain some traction. And we're talking about them. I mean, we're sitting here talking about them on your show. And it's just that's kind of the whole point is they're being talked about and their names are out there. And yeah, they are undefeated and they're a team that, looks pretty good some of the time. But I think you just have to remember that the whole point of the college football playoff era is that you're getting the 4 best teams in the playoff. There is nobody that's sitting there and saying that if you match up, let's say, let me just pick a team here, Oklahoma and UCF. There is nobody that's going to look at that game and say, oh, yeah, Oklahoma's going to lose to UCF. Yeah. They're just not. I mean, Oklahoma's a better team, and Oklahoma already has a loss to a top 10 team in Texas. There's just – that's just the way that it is. And I hate to say that to UCF fans. I don't hate it that much because I just think that sometimes they get confused about what the whole point is here. And we actually have a Thursday night game coming up between Temple and UCF. Temple is a good football team. Jeff Collins, former Florida defensive coordinator, now the head coach there. Watch Temple give UCF a run for their money. I mean, this whole story gets very tired if all of a sudden UCF gets a loss.
In London one time about 15 years ago, I read a line in the London Times. Someone was quoted saying, "Don't confuse activity with achievement." Okay, so that kind of fits the narrative right there. So
good line
there you go. You can use that if you like. Don't have to even give me credit. By the way, just speaking of other politically incorrect things, I know this is something that I've talked to others in your network about, but the term world's largest outdoor cocktail party has surfaced again on the contention, and I agree with this, that you don't have to be an alcoholic or you don't have to abuse alcohol to go to a cocktail party. And the word cocktail party has gotten a bad name in the opinion of many people. And the celebration in the South, you know how football is, there's cocktail party. You can drink tonic water if you want to. You go there. So I think that name is emerging again. I don't know what you've heard about that, but I wanted to ask you.
You won't hear me say it, though. I'll get in trouble with that.
I know, and I've already got Feinbaum in trouble about mentioning on his show. So there you go. But here's a little research for you. A very good story written by Will Salmon of the Athletic, young man I don't really know, but the name was given to it by a guy named Bill Castells, the late Bill Castells, who was a sports columnist for the Florida Times-Union. And it sort of just stumbled on it, and it's stuck all these years, and it will surface again, I guarantee you. But I understand the network's concern. I understand about glamorizing alcohol. I understand all that, but it is what it is, okay?
Hey, look, I'm not mad at the name. I just won't be saying the name.
Of course you won't.
I like my job.
I understand boss's rules, whatever you got to say. I want to say one more thing about this deal with UCF, about getting attention. All right, you can get attention. I can strip down naked and run down the street and with my hair on fire. It doesn't mean I'm worthy of anything, okay? I can get attention. So anyway, I'll leave you with a laugh at that sight. Laura, listen.
That's great.
Have a great homecoming, and I'm looking forward to seeing the show, and looking forward to seeing the game, and awesome. All the best. Congratulations on all your success, and don't let those boys push you around. You do pretty good at holding your own there. So.
I don't. They gotta watch out. And one thing too, if anyone is coming to Jacksonville, you definitely need to come to our set. We're in Lot P, right smack dab in the middle of Lot P, between the baseball stadium and the football stadium. You cannot miss us.
Guess where I'm going to be.
And see all of us. And then here's the other thing. Tebow is giving away 300 free books. So the first 300 people, they'll get signed books. His brand new book, This Is the Day. So come out and get you a free book that's signed by Tim Tebow.
outstanding piece of information. I'll pass that along. Somebody should tweet that out.
Breaking news.
Yes, breaking here on our show. And by the way, I am parking at, guess where? Lot P. I will be right there. Oh, so we'll be wandering over that way to say hello and watch your show. Beautiful. All right? Laura, thank you so much. All right. Take care and all the best. Look forward to seeing you and talking to you. Thanks for your time. All right?
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Laura Rutledge. Hey, yeah, by the way, just for you people ask, are we having tailgates? No, we're not having a tailgate there for G&K. But my coordinating producer, Chad Rich, and his brother Darren, and I, and the great Danny Williams will be pulling in Lot P early in the morning, heading to the ball game. I'll be headed to the press box, and the fellows will be headed to points unknown. And we'll be trying to park side by side so we can at least open up the trunk of our SUV and maybe get a cold one or a piece of chicken or something. So if you're in the area, you see us, holler at us. Be glad to say hello. We don't have anything to give away or food or drink to share, but we might find a cold in there for you. It is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, by the way. I guess you can have it with beer, too, by the way, not just cocktails. Okay, let's take a little break here. I want to remind you, folks, that there is some really good gear on our clothing partners site, All Florida Sportswear. They don't have any of these at the moment. I'm asking him whether or not, let me get this off here, whether or not Tony wants to make some of these. This is the vintage shirt from day one. It says, as you can see, stay loyal to the kingdom, dilly dilly, and has the crown on it. And it has on one side G&K, other side Mullins inaugural season 2018. Kind of a collector's item. I thought I had some left. I don't. They're gone. So if you have an interest in it, let me know. Maybe I can talk Tony into making some and having them available for you for the next whiteout. Well, I had a couple of requests today for some shirts that I might still be able to find some white ones with orange, which the Crown Prince has at his house, but right now I don't have any. So that's what's going on. Meanwhile, check this out. These other beautiful shirts are still available. Circle 15 shirts, a G&K Shield, all right here. Well, we said they were right there. It looks to me like I have to go get one.
Florida Gator supporters, followers, friends, and families. Listen, my friends, Tony Baker and Ashley Knight that owns allfloridasportswear.com selling Ring of Fire t-shirts so that we can blue out the swamp on Saturday. Obviously, the shirts are in honor of the team along with Tim Tebow.
I want to put that, give you a little sample of what that was about. All right. And finally, let's tell you a little bit about, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and play our interview with Zach Abolverdi. We had a really good one today. I think you'll enjoy it. Let's do that, and we'll hold off for the next commercial, okay? Out to the Red Star split screen and go see our buddy Zach Abolverdi, who is, I guess he's in Gator Bait offices. I'm not sure. Or maybe that's his palatial suite home. I don't know. Zach, where are you exactly?
I'm actually on University of Florida campus. I'm in the Weimer Hall. I just got done doing a radio show, so I come upstairs and do this from here.
Ray Weimer was the dean of journalism when I was in school there. Wow. Ray Weimer, he had quite a story. We'll share that sometimes. I love me some Ray Weimer, by the way. So this is, we just were talking before the program started, before your interview, and this is a really good time to be covering Florida football. And we're just sharing the stories about our listeners and people being excited. And, hey, SEC Nation coming to Jacksonville, ESPN Game Day, Gator Bait, the Buddy Martin Show. All the big ones are going to be in Jacksonville, right? So
that's right.
So it's very good. And let me just start out by saying two things. A question, really. One of them is it possible the Gator fans are getting almost overconfident about this game? Think about it. I mean, it's laughable.
I think so. I don't know if overconfident is the right word, but there's definitely a belief out there that Florida's going to win this game. And that's really I felt it this week on the airwaves and listening to people call the radio show. I even had a few callers, buddy, that didn't even want to talk about the game. Florida's going to win. They wanted to have another topic that they wanted to discuss. I mean, that's the Dan Mullen effect and what he's done to this fan base. Making them, first of all, making Florida football fun again, making the Gators fun to watch. When you tune in or you show up into the swamp to watch them on Saturday, you're going to get a show. That's happened. And then, the way that they're playing and the confidence that's come from that for the fan base, they really feel like Dan Mullen is going to put them in position to win the game on Saturday.
Yeah, it is the Dan Mullen effect. That's very true. And because we've discussed it all season, and we talked about it this week on the show, and also the Quarterback Club on Wednesday night in Ocala, and the fact that this Mullen thing is a thing. It's a thing. There's definitely a cohesion there with his players, an air of confidence that they seem to have drawn from him, and it's spilled over to the fan base. They're kind of like, hey, we got Mullen, man. As you said, the Mullen effect. So, yeah, that's one thing. The second thing is, what's going to happen if Florida loses this game? I mean, are we going to go back to that old days of, oh boy, Florida's no good anymore. They lost 2 games. There goes their recruiting. I don't know. Mullen's not that. I mean, this is the yin and the yang of the Florida Gator Nation fan base that goes back and forth. Sure. What do you think? What you talk to people every day on the Tailgate Show on WRUF. What is your feeling about the fans?
Yeah, obviously I just said, I mean, there is that expectation or that belief that Florida can win this game. And when you look at the numbers and how they match up, the perception has changed. But, I mean, whatever folks thought about these two programs going into the year, now 7 games in, there's the reality of where they're actually at with their teams this year. And when you put in, paper to paper, and then you watch them play the last couple of weeks, Florida can be competitive in this game. And I think at the end of the day, that's what fans want to see. Yes, they expect to win. Yes, they believe Florida can win, but be competitive. Don't get beat 42-7. Go out there and show that improvement and that progression that everyone's been seeing in all these other weeks can continue to carry over and definitely show up maybe even more because Florida just is coming off a bye week. I think if they come into this game, put up a good fight, win or lose, this is a team that before the year, buddy, nobody gave the Gators a shot to win this game. So the fact that they're even in the conversation and now they can be in competition with this team, I think people will look at that and say, if Florida can win the rest of the way, finish 10-2, people will look back on this as a really successful season for Mullen in year one, getting the wins that he got. And even if you can't beat Georgia, if you can be competitive with them, they'll say, well, that's a lot better than 42-7.
You were at the press conference Monday, sitting on the front row down there, and I asked a question about who do you say you are, basically. And Mullen's answer was brilliant, and I can't recite it for word, but we're a defensive.
I put it in the magazine.
Did you? Remember the reaction when what he said?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he said, look, you watch this Florida football team, and it's not like they're this juggernaut offensively that's making all these crazy plays all over the field, and also not this dominant defensive unit that's just getting 3 and outs every possession. But what they do is they stay composed. They know how to handle resiliency, handle adversity, show that resiliency, and make the plays that they need to win the game. He was also asked, buddy, on Monday, do you feel kind of confident about this Georgia game because of the way that, they lost to the Tigers and you guys out-physicaled LSU? And he go, well, hold on. I don't agree with that statement. I think that the Gators beat LSU is what Mullen said. They made the plays when they had to and were able to win the game. And I think that's something that you'll look for this week as well.
Now, I'm going to say something that's going to sound outrageous, but you'll understand what I'm saying. And that is that when you talk about the two teams, and I've kind of gone side by side in my brain about what how they're going to do this. I got my own thoughts about it. But when you say who's a better team, automatically people will say Georgia. I'm going to dispute that for a second because Georgia's got the best personnel based on recruiting, right? They've got that, all right? So that doesn't mean they got a better team. It means they got a better personnel. As we saw, there are pieces that need to be fixed. LSU exposed them, a few of those. Now, in terms of a team, which is my concept of a team, you can argue, tell me I'm full of it if you want to, but if you talk about the pieces and you put in special teams, offensive line, running game, receivers, et cetera, coaching staff, I mean, I think I can make a case for Florida being a better team.
Yeah, and we'll find that out on Saturday.
Is that crazy?
What is crazy, buddy, is the fact that they could be the better team, and they've made that much of a jump from 1 year to now. I mean, because they were not the better team last year, and it's because of the coaching staff. I mean, you talk about the offensive line and the schematics and all the improvements at pretty much every position I think that they've made that allows Florida to be on the same level or better than Georgia. But what gets them over the hump, what beats the Bulldogs on Saturday is the coaching staff and the difference there that Mullen and his assistants have made. And I do think, if you want to line them up player to player, top to bottom, and give the advantage to Georgia, that's fine. I think Florida's got the advantage with the coaching staff. And
they mask their weaknesses better, in my opinion. And then you look at this Georgia team, you say, okay, they had this, or they had good running backs. Well, LSU kind of corralled them. Their offensive line. Well, their offensive line had trouble, as a matter of fact, and you start going, the secondary's got a few flaws in it, and you start thinking about this, and you think, well, they've got some Achilles heel. Here's the other amazing stat. Georgia has not beaten a team with a winning record this year.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
And that shows you, I mean, when they did go up against a level of competition, that was something to be a force to be reckoned with. We saw what happened against the Tigers. So we're looking forward to it, buddy, because this is really when we're going to find out this Mullen makeover that's taken place, how far Florida can really go with it this year. We already know that they've overachieved. We already know that they've done more things than I think people expected this year. Now it's, if you beat Georgia, which no one expected, well, how far can you go? It's not just Atlanta now that Florida's eyeing and trying to accomplish. And the fact that they're even here this week and that you and I are talking about this is just, it is crazy.
Zach Abolverdi, Gator Bait. Final thought. I know you hadn't made your picks yet because you're thinking about your radio show, whatever.
No, it's out there.
Okay, well, let's let this, before you say it, I don't want to use the word break it down, but let's assess right now and tell me how you see this game being played out, and then give me your pick.
Well, I will say going into the year, I had Florida losing this game. I had them losing Mississippi State. I had them losing Georgia, and I had them losing to Florida State. And a lot of that was going to Tallahassee. Everyone knows how tough that is. And it's still going to be a tough trip for Florida. But now we're 7 games in. We've seen these teams. We see that Mississippi State is not what we thought it was going to be. Florida State is not what we thought they were going to be. And Georgia's not what they thought that they were going to be. But beyond that, Florida's a lot better. I mean, the difference in these two programs, yes, Georgia, lost the seniors and everyone that helped them go on that run that they did last season. But really on the Florida sideline, that's where the differences have been made. And, every week they've just continued to show me something, buddy. They've proven that they could win a game where if you would have told me going into it on Saturday, hey, this is going to happen, i.e. Vandy, i.e. Mississippi State, some of these tough battles that the Gators have found themselves in, I say there's no way the Gators are going to win that game. They've won those games. And the fact that they've done that and that Dan Mullen has had a bye week now to look back on all the deficiencies, all the things that they've needed to work on, and look at Georgia with his staff and scheme up some things to beat them, I just think the Gators have the advantage. They've shown that they can beat a team like this, that they can come back. If the Bulldogs get up early, buddy, and they throw out some scripted plays that catches Florida's defense off balance and the Gators get down, 10-0, it's not the end of the world. Florida can come back in this game. I do think it's going to be back and forth. I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be close, but because of special teams and Dan Mullen's coaching ability, I think Florida wins a close one, 27-24.
Wow, Zach Abolverdi out there with the Gators, picking the Gators to win that game. Amazing. Hey, final thought. I asked Laura, she was McKeeman when she worked for us. Her name now is Rutledge. So if I say McKeeman, sorry. But I asked her about this, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. And look, I know it's politically correct. I know why it was changed and all that. But there's a yearning now for the old guard, especially, to say that's what it's always been. They really can't even say it on the air. And she said, you'll hear this coming out of my mouth. But what's your take on that? I understand why they didn't want to glorify alcohol, whatever, but isn't it a part of the culture of Southern football as a celebration and not an endorsement of alcohol?
Sure. And as long as I've lived and as long as I've watched Florida, Georgia, and been to Jacksonville, it's always been the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It never wanted to make me drink as a kid. And I still don't drink cocktails, but I still call it that. And that's what it'll always be to me. And I think for a lot of other fans too, buddy. And this rivalry is always going to be special. Having it in Jacksonville is always going to be special. And when you get it on years like this, where it's the first top 10 matchup since 2008, first time game day has been in Jacksonville since 2005, and the first time ever that game day and SEC Nation have been in the same regular season game, it's high stakes in Jacksonville this Saturday.
Well said. We can't wait to the next edition coming out of Gator Bait. The editor himself is Zach Abolverdi. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
See you in, what do we call it up there? Well, just see you at the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, okay?
That's right. Cheers up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's what's going on. We're going to go right to the line now and see if we can get the tight end. Tate's there someplace. I think he'll be standing by. Mr. Tate Casey, the Gator Radio Network, will join us momentarily. We'll get Tate's take, hopefully, and see what he thinks is going to happen on the field, and if Florida is a better football team or not a better football team. The man who normally roams the sidelines is now roaming on Skype. He's right here on our screen, and good evening to Mr. Tate Casey. Hi, Tate.
What's up, buddy?
How are you, my friend?
Doing all right.
Looking good there. I got you loud and clear. You're watching football in the background, I see. There's only one thing wrong with this picture.
What is that?
The colors you have on.
It's red and navy if it makes you feel any better.
It looks black. I did this.
It's the Red Sox. It's the Red Sox coming out in me.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you watch this. And I did this by mistake. This is a card I made out to a woman who's 83 listens to our podcast. I dedicated all the podcasts to her, Tate, and I made, unfortunately, it red and black. The reason I bring that up was it's usually not something I think of, but coaches are fanatical about this. And I'll tell you a quick story, then I want to get your take on the Gators. I was over in St. Augustine in 1990 when Steve Spurrier first came. My wife was there. They were invited to go have dinner. And he said, why don't you all come to the Gator Club with us? And she says, okay, fine. My wife had on a dress. It happened to be red with black on it. She didn't think about that. She didn't plan to go to the quarterback club. So we wound up headed over to the Gator Club. And he looked at her and said, what are you doing wearing those colors? She's thinking, what do you mean? Those are Georgia colors. They are? And she went to Florida, by the way. She didn't even think about it. Yeah, you can't wear red and black. Well, too bad I'm going to wear it that's what I'm wearing tonight. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I and my son-in-law were in Columbus, and I had on a beautiful royal blue sweater, and my son-in-law had on, I think he had on a green something. And we walked in where the coaches were. We were going to dinner with the Ohio State team that night. And we walked in the football facility, and Urban came out with his coaching staff and looked at me and said, get that blue off. He called to one of his guys and says, go get these guys scarleted up. So he went and got red windbreakers, so we had to wear red windbreakers to dinner. And that's just an example of how these coaches are. They're crazy, aren't they?
Somehow that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Nuts, huh? I hope your internet holds up. If it does, we'll get you to call us back because it's a little bit jumping around. But let me get you to give me. All right, look, there's been so much said about this. I know you've had your private thoughts. You're getting ready to go on the sideline for the first time to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, and yes, I still call it that, and I always will. And you'll be doing your shows, your reports from a very loud stadium. What are you thinking about? What's your game plan?
For me, it's just it's status quo, business as usual. Showing up and being able to just put out on the airwaves what we always do. And hope to give the listeners something to take with them and a good visual on hopefully an amazing game.
It seems to be going well for you at Tate right now. By the way, I had Mick Hubert on last week. We had a really good conversation about the broadcast. He, of course, always speaks highly of you. But he brought up the point that it has been so loud the last couple of games, some of the games, that, especially in that interception and the LSU game, et cetera, that he says sometimes he can't hear himself. And so what's it like for you?
For me, those guys have the added benefit of a full headset. For me, I'm in earbuds, and these noise-canceling earbuds never seem to drown out enough of the noise during big game situations. So, that LSU interception was definitely a moment where I couldn't hear Mick. I had to listen to the callback later on with the whole, this place is an insane asylum. I didn't get a chance to accept that as it was going on. But it was pretty amazing what we've seen this year and kind of certain key moments of games that have been, extremely loud. And it's not manufactured noise. We go on the road to Tennessee and Mississippi State and some of these stadiums, and they're cranking this music into the stadium through speakers right behind the bench. Mm-hmm. At UF, you're getting this noise, but it's all crowd created noise. And so it's been something special to see. And glad to be a part of it. Being with Mick and Lee on the call is something I get to enjoy as I'm watching the game. I'm getting the full effect of Mick in my ear, on the headset, and it's pretty awesome.
I had posted a tease on the show today, and it's been a subject of conversation the last 24, 48 hours. And I think I've even maybe mentioned it to you, and I sent the tweet out. You might have seen it. And it sounds crazy almost to say two things. Some Florida fans might be getting a little overconfident. Obviously there's really no reason to be overconfident when you're a 7-point underdog. But it feels that way, and people I've talked to doing radio shows, they say the same thing. It's not necessarily a false bravado or not necessarily a cockiness. It's a quiet, it's overconfidence. I don't know. Do you sense any of that?
No, I think, I think Florida fans, one, they're prideful to see the fact that we've put a team on the field and what we've been waiting for the last few years. I will say there's got to be a certain level of respect for a Georgia team that's done great things in the last 2 years and is still riding pretty high right now. And not only that, coming off a loss against a great LSU team is not going to make them any less hungry to come into this game and beat Florida. But I'll say that, if I was a player on this team, there'd be a certain hunger. I'd probably walk the same walk these guys are and what this fan base is kind of creating right now. I wouldn't call it an overconfidence at all. I'm a little bit that I wouldn't necessarily say the disrespect that the national media has given, Florida in terms of chances to win this game. Mm-hmm. But there is a certain, I guess you would call it a disrespect. There's some people that don't think Florida really even deserves much mention to win this game, and it's kind of disappointing. But if I'm a player, that only drives you a little bit more to get ready to show up.
Yeah, and I wasn't talking about the players being overconfident. They're not, but the fans seem.
Yeah, and I get what you were saying. Yeah. I'm just saying when you see it from a fan perspective, I think they feed off of what the players and the coaching staff are kind of bringing to the table here. I don't really call it. I feel pretty confident, and I may be one of those involved with that overconfidence. But I look at Georgia; it's a beatable team. I look at where Florida's trending in the last 4 games. I do think this game boils down to the trenches, in the run game, and Florida's been, pretty spot on in the last 4 weeks, or 4 games that we've played. Since the Kentucky game, Florida's kind of turned a little bit of a corner in the run game. The one question that I want answered this weekend is what we're doing on run defense against a very, very, very stout.
All right, does that concern you, Tate?
I don't think I say it concerns me. We do some really good things, and we've had some pretty good flashes in the interior defensive line that I'd like to see more of. I think on the edge and at the linebacker position, we play a lot better when our interior defensive line does an unbelievable job of going 100 miles an hour every snap.
Yeah.
And I can recall Tennessee Adam Reese's first game back, if you go and watch that Tennessee footage, the best thing we did that game, in my opinion, up front was defensive line and interior defensive line were owning the line of scrimmage, and it was allowing David Reese and Voshon Joseph to come downhill 100 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. And in order to play great defense, you've got to do that against the run game.
I was telling somebody today, talking to a football person about this. In fact, it was a local high school coach who's got 5 recruits Florida's looking at. We talked about a stat that doesn't exist, interior lineman speed. Because the guys like Polite and Zuniga, those guys close on those quarterbacks really rapidly. Once they get a beat on them, they're on top of them, and they don't miss tackles very often. And then you mix that in with the variety of blitzes that Florida throws at him, with Todd Grantham throws at him. And I love how he uses Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He'll blitz him, he'll drop him back, he'll drop back, obviously, CC or somebody else in the zone. In his zone, he confuses people. Now the question is whether he can confuse Jake Fromm or whether or not it's Justin Fields. That remains to be seen. But the variety of ways he can attack an offense, to me, is what makes this defense so special.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when you've got the talent at your disposal, when you look at Florida's back end, I think coming into the year, the biggest concern was how thin we were in the back end coming into the season. And that has kind of been, almost put on the back burner, that conversation, because of what we've seen in the last 7 weeks. Florida's been pretty buttoned up in the back end, playing some young guys, and they've been mixing in a couple of guys, even with, McWilliams and Stewart, and those guys have come in and done a pretty phenomenal job. But it allows you to go those man coverage situations. It allows you to bring that pressure. It allows you to mix up those looks between zone and man. And you're absolutely right. When those guys on the front 7 are playing pretty disciplined football, especially in terms of gap responsibilities and pressing the line of scrimmage, our defense is about as good as you could ask for.
Yeah. We've made a long checklist this week, a variety of people I've had on, from Chris Doring to Laura Rutledge, et cetera, people who cover Edgar Thompson, people who cover the team, about the checklist of what Dan Mullen has been able to accomplish this year. And I'm not going to say it's miraculous, but when you put the total list together and you start talking about everything from mood to attitude to a late close on the recruiting this year to identifying players, to picking his quarterback, to having let Grantham decide his defense, to his play calling. I mean, all his special teams. He's done an amazing job, his staff has, to coach this team up. He's really coached them up about 3 years' worth in a year. And now, I don't know. They could go out and get beat on Saturday. I don't think they will, by the way. But this thing could go, after an open date. You never know what you're going to get. But to me, and that's why I'm asking you this, of all those things, whether it's play calling or whether it's recruiting or whether it's developing players, which he's done a great job of, what are the 2 or 3 things that have been most impressive to you about Dan Mullen and his staff?
I think, one, just how his players almost exude that same energy that he does. Dan Mullen brings a lot of energy to a team. When you're asking for buy-in, you can't create the buy-in when you're not a head coach who's going out and trying to show what exactly you want in your program. And when you watch Dan Mullen on the sidelines, he wants the chest bumping in the fired up, defense and offense. He wants his guys to come out with that intensity. He expects it, and he himself, obviously, at times, as you've seen on TV and they've shown, he showed that same energy. And they feed off of that. I think that's the one cool thing about Dan Mullen is he has a unique ability to relate with his players, and they relate to him, and he gets through to them. And I think that's what's also created. Honestly, when you look back at it as in terms of picking staff and everything else, I think he's done. I would almost say through 7 games, you'd be hard pressed to find a staff that has done as good a job as Florida's staff as a whole. I would include, obviously, the strength and conditioning staff in that 100%.
Yes, good point.
That would lead me to my next point on that list. Would be the second thing I would say is closing in the second half. Whereas in the last 2 years, we've had issues closing games out, close games that led down to the fourth quarter, third quarter. there was times where we would be down, 10 to 14 points, and you could almost feel the wind just getting sucked out of the team. You don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
Our guys are playing faster and stronger in the fourth quarter than we have in the last 3-4 years. So it's reassuring as a fan, as a former player, to see that. That was one of the things that I think probably bothered me most, coming from a team that prided themselves on the fourth quarter. And so I think we've seen that come back. That'd be the two things that I've noticed mostly.
Okay. And finally, when you draw up this is my favorite thing to talk about, although it isn't, it's probably overrated by most fans and some media people. I love the chess match between the coaches, and especially we all love trick plays, all right? We love trick plays. I don't consider the trick plays to be something like, I don't consider the fake punt a trick play. It's just a well-executed play, in my opinion. But what I really enjoy are the calls, the creative calls, where Mullen takes a player who is not going to be readily identified right away, like Kroll, puts him on the field. They don't know who he is, and he's left-handed, and executes a pass so it set up a touchdown to Felipe Franks on the throwback, which to me was absolutely brilliant. I love those kind of calls. And so I've been thinking of calls all week long. Okay, let me be Dan Mullen and come up with a play, all right? So here's one for you, all right? If you got one for me, fine. This is just a make-up call, all right? So let's think about some of the players that we have not seen on the field, all right? Some really talented players we haven't seen on the field on the offensive side of the ball. One of them is Jacob Copeland, all right?
Okay.
Who's
I'm
been
with you.
Go ahead.
Been hurt. Yeah, I'm with you.
He's been hurt, but I believe I've been reading that he's okay now, that he can actually go. And you say, well, you wouldn't want to use him. Why would you burn a red shirt? But you don't burn a red shirt. He's still got 4 games he can play. So you don't think about putting him on the field. So here's a guy who I've only seen flashes of him. He's really fast. I think he's got really good hands. He's a big receiver. So you're down at 2nd and 8 on the 18-yard line, and suddenly number, whatever he is, I don't even know, comes on the field, all right? He shows up there at a split end position or X or Y, whatever, and next thing you know, he's in motion, and people are saying, who is this guy? And what does this do to our defense? And then before you know it, he's got the ball on a jet sweep, scoring a touchdown.
There you go.
How you like that one, baby?
Yeah, it catches them off guard, whatever it takes. And I'll say this. You mentioned Lucas Kroll and that throwback pass.
Yeah.
The best thing about that is when you look at some of these young guys and that you don't see that often, imagine what kind of trust Dan Mullen has to have in a young tight end to put a play like that in his hands at the moment he did.
Exactly.
It lets you know, one, how hard Lucas Kroll works in practice to have a trust of a head coach like that. It also lets you know that Dan Mullen's not afraid to try and, pull those out of the hat at times. But I can promise you that play was practiced to no end before they ran it, because the one thing Dan's not going to do is just draw that up on the sideline and say, hey, let's try this real quick.
and Kroll was bugging him about throwing the ball too. He told the story about it. But I mean, I just use that as an example. I know some people, like some of my guys like Dan, think I'm crazy putting looking Cope in the game. But he only gets to catch one ball. So it's not like he has to play the whole game.
That's all that matters, as long as you catch it.
Yeah, and anyway, it's just, I think, the kind of thing, it isn't likely that would happen, but it's the kind of thing, that's the way he thinks. You talk about out of the box, he thinks out of the complete warehouse. I mean, they're around the box. But all right, so your thoughts now about how this shapes up. Final thoughts from Tate. Casey from the Gator Radio Network, former great tight end for the Florida Gators, who made Tim Tebow famous on a jump pass. I know you thought about this. What if you dropped that ball?
That's a good one. I need to start using put Tim Tebow on the map.
Put him on the map.
I think this game boils down to a lot. There's going to be. I always say this, and it always usually holds true in these big SEC matchups with huge implications. It's going to come down to a handful of plays, and as a player, you never know when your number being called is going to be that play that wins the game for you. And so you have to go hard on every single snap. For me, I think the run game plays a huge, huge part in this game. It's pretty obvious, if you look at historically, especially in the last 23 years, I know Feinbaum made mention the last 12 years has depicted the winner by the run game. I think the total's like 18-5 in the last 23 years that's been the case. And so obviously you have to establish a run game. Both teams come in running the ball well. I think Florida probably in the last 4 games has had a little bit more of an upper hand in that department. I also think their run defense has been better in the last 4 games than what it shows on paper, which is promising to see. Mind you, if you take away the big plays we gave up against Vanderbilt, that game looks a little bit different, especially on the containment plays that we gave up. But I think run game play is huge. I look for a lot of first down wins to put us up in situations to win on third. And I really expect our defense to come out guns blazing and put us in a position on offense to win the game. So I'd love to see nothing more but the defense play lights out exactly like we did against LSU in a big primetime matchup and see Felipe Franks manage this offense and take care of the football.
Sure. And by the way, whenever Copeland catches a winning touchdown pass, I want you to say, Mick, Buddy Martin told me this is going to happen. Give me full credit for it, will you?
Less than 48 hours ago, Buddy told me that was going to happen.
You could say you made it up, and I took it from you.
I'll give you mine. The only one that
yes,
I want to
please
see,
do.
And mind you, we see variations of jump passes, etc. The one that I want to see the most is literally almost a spin off the jump pass, but I want to see us go under center in a heavy formation with Scarlett in the backfield. Felipe go up to the line of scrimmage like he's going to QB sneak it. I want the center to snap it under his legs. I want Felipe to do a QB sneak and let the line just converge. And I want Scarlett to take off to the right, either get to the pylon, but I want the tight end to block for a second and go straight to the back pylon for a run-pass option.
I like it.
I don't know how that doesn't work in college football or how nobody's thought about that, but I've always wanted that play to be run by somebody. I don't care.
Could work. And by the way, the jumbo package always throws them off, it seems like. When you put the jumbo package in there, most all put the double tights and whatever, and they're all, and get the big back in the backfield, they're all scrunched up, and Felipe is there under center, and you hike it to Scarlett, and he throws a pass to who's a good tight end we can throw? How about
you name them? Who could you name? I mean, right now in the tight end room.
How about
Morrill Stevens?
Morrill Stevens, yeah.
But how deep are we at tight end right now? That's another.
Oh my gosh, that's your position, dude. I mean that.
I seem biased. I really do. I watch.
No.
I think we've done a phenomenal job of being able to mix up looks with the tight end position.
Yeah,
you've seen them at wide receiver, you've seen them in the slot, you've seen them in the hip, you've seen them on ball. He's done a great job, and they've got a lot of capable tight ends in that room.
We're talking now, 4 or 5 tight ends, right?
6.
Is there 6?
I mean,
what am I forgetting about?
We played 6. We played 7 in the first game, and I had to ask Coach after the game. Did I see 7 tight ends between R.J. Raymond, Morrill Stevens, Kamari Gamble, Ciante Lewis? You had Lucas Kroll, and then I know Pitts, and then Pitts.
Yeah, I really like Pitts too.
And so Pitts and Kroll are going to be household names here pretty soon. But I mean, the job that Ciante Lewis has done blocking, I think you can mix in Morrill Stevens, R.J. Raymond.
Who's Kenmore Gamble? He's a tight end.
Yeah, and all 4 of those guys have had significant playing time this year.
Dante Lang?
Yeah.
Ciante Lewis, obviously. Yeah, but I mean, I think R.J. Raymond's a fullback, but they don't have one.
Well, if you
whatever,
I mean,
it's the H-back, whatever you want to call it.
However you want to classify him, but they're still putting him in that what we call that P position or that H-back position. Right. The same thing I finished out playing in 08. Right. That's a very, very unique position that you have to be able to play on ball slot.
Really? Yeah. You have to have ball skills. You have to be able to block. You have to be able to. Yeah, that's right. Well, you did it well. So, look at you. Hey, tell people what you're doing now.
I'm in sales.
Well, whereabouts? Tell them what you're.
I'm living in Jacksonville.
Yeah, but what's your company's name?
What's that?
What's your company's name?
I can't put that out.
You can't?
No. I can't. I mean, I could, but
I was trying to give you a plug, dude. So
listen, I gotta go back. I gotta go back and get my my HR folder.
Okay, I don't get you in trouble. I'm just trying to give you a little free pop. But anyway,
I'm in medical sales. I mean, I can at least mention that.
Okay, well that's good enough. I'll cover it. It's like the guy when he goes on what is that? The Wheel of Fortune. Here's Tate Casey. He's a medical company in Jacksonville, Florida, right? So they never mentioned the name. But,
That's about right. That's about right.
My friend, I appreciate your time. It's been a good conversation, and have a good game on Saturday. It's going to be really fun. By the way, Tebow's giving away 300 books to the first 300 people, Gator Nation, who are there at the SEC Nation. So it'll be packed out in parking lot P out there. So
yeah, that's exactly where mine
is too.
So maybe I can get over there early. Maybe he'll hook me up with a picture.
Well, there you go. And then after that, maybe I'll hook you up with a brewski or something if I see you over there. Right?
Sounds good, man.
After work,
but
of course.
Enjoy it too much. We'll see y'all on Saturday.
All right, my friend. Thank you, Tate.
Thanks, buddy.
Tate Casey filling us up with good stuff there from the former tight end. Well, okay. Been a good night. Enjoyed very much having those three folks on and talking some football. I mean, we've had, I don't like to brag because it's not me, it's the guests, but we've had some really interesting guests this week. And I appreciate them letting me impose on them. So thank all those guests. And also, tomorrow morning, we've got several more. We'll have Paul Feinbaum on at 11 o'clock, Football Friday. Let's see, Franz Beard, the Iron Duke will be on tomorrow. I think we'll have, let's see, Joe Williams, our handicapper. We'll have our handicappers from the Quarterback Club and talking ball on the Friday. So that's going to be fun. What else? Don't forget the podcast. Tell your friends about that. And we are going to be in Lot P, but we're working, and we won't be able to participate in too many things socially. But if you're around the area, stick your head in, say hi. Chad will be there, my coordinating producer, and my buddy Danny Williams will be there, and maybe others, but only a few. Nothing official going on there. So I'll leave you with this note. I found this very interesting. So think about this. I don't know where this is going. You all heard about the controversy regarding the call on Devin White and how he now is suspended for the first half for the game. I kept thinking, why could he be suspended? Because they don't play this weekend. And I forgot they both have open dates, LSU, Alabama. And so the next time they play will be next weekend. And arguably some people called him the best linebacker in football. Will miss the first half because of the very controversial call on the officials, which James Carville alleged was, conspiracy, rigged against Alabama or against LSU. I don't know about that, but I do know this. There's a danger here anytime too much power gets centralized. Look it up. You historians know this. When you get too much power, what's that saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So you got to be real careful about giving all the power to one group of people. And very slowly, it's a danger here, potentially, of the way they're running the officials program and the SEC. Now, I'm not going to go there I'm not going to go all James Carville on you. This is not what this is about. But this is what worries me. When you have a group of people in Birmingham, and they have it in the NFL too as well, and they have the people who are oversight for the officials, allegedly they say the calls will be made by the field and the replay booth at the game. But I happen to know that's not necessarily the case. And that concerns me because I have it on very, very solid information that, and I will never tell the source, that I didn't even see the play, so I can't describe it. I saw the replay. I saw the play, obviously, not live. I didn't see the play. When Devin White was targeted, called for targeting and dismissed, that the crew on site had it as targeting, reviewed it from the replay booth at the field, okay? And at that point in time, it's told to me by a really unimpeachable source that they were going to wave it off and say it's not targeting, okay? It's not targeting. Think about this now for a second, the implications of it. But they were told by Birmingham, no, keep the targeting foul. Now, how much of that information got out to other people, I don't know. This came from a great source, someone who knows the inner workings of the officials in the SEC. And if that's the case, then even though Carville was absolutely nuts on Feinbaum when he talked about all this stuff, it would lead to those kind of conspiracy theories when you have too many people in Birmingham in a booth overruling officials at the game when they clearly got it, and the replay booths are told there they get the final word, and you're overruling them and saying, no, it's targeting, stay with it. That's a scary thing. All right? It's something you got to watch. You'll never hear about it, whether it was targeting or it wasn't targeting. It doesn't matter. Whatever it was, okay? We can argue that till the cows come home. But the bottom line is, when you have a system and you allegedly say the people in the replay booth of the site, the officials have the game, unless they ask for help, perhaps, which I'd hate to see them do, because that makes it totally remote then. And you have someone making a call and then deciding to wave it off and having the officials at the SEC office. And I'm telling you, I didn't see this. I can't prove it, but I know the person that told me this, and this person knows what goes on there. Said this was waved off. So it doesn't matter, Richie, whether it was or wasn't targeting, okay? I know LSU fans are going to be upset. You can argue the way you want to. That's not the point here. The point is that when you have those kind of things happening among the officiating, it leads to suspicion of collusion. Whether it's true or not, it leads to, you think, okay, that group of people nobody knows, nameless faces, not even on camera, they're making decisions about a game they're already at. It leads to a lot of unpleasant thoughts, okay? I'm just saying. Think about it, and we'll talk about it again. But that, to me, is a warning shot fired across the bow. Be very, very careful about that, giving too much power to a group of people. No, Richie, you don't understand the point. I'm not saying it does matter to LSU fans and Alabama fans on the call. Okay? I'm saying for the purposes of this argument, I'm not arguing that point. It's not what this is about. It's not about me arguing whether it's targeting or not. It's about the fact that it was called one way, going to be reversed, and the people in Birmingham told them they had to stick with it. Whether it was or whether it wasn't, whatever. It's just this whole thing of a group of people with too much power. That's the point, okay? That's all I'm saying. So, anyway, yeah, okay, Richie, it could be a trash call. I understand that. Again, for the third time, I'm not talking about the call. I'm not debating that. You can have your opinions. Fine. It's a trash call? Call it that. I'm not getting to that debate. This is about process, about the process of things that take place, all right? And whether or not, whatever they want to talk about officials, have at it. I'm just telling you, this concerns me, all right? I don't talk that much about officials. I didn't like to call the so-called offsetting penalties, which they weren't, the sportsmanlike conducts that were called against both teams, Florida and Vanderbilt. I didn't like that call at all. I didn't like it for a lot of reasons, but on either side. But this is a different thing. This is process, and I rarely ever talk about officials. But this is something that is really something that needs to be looked into and checked because it's dangerous, okay? Anyway, I want to get that thought in there before the day was over. I'll see you tomorrow morning for Football Friday. Thanks for listening tonight. Thank you to our guests, Laura Rutledge, to Zach Abolverdi, to Tate Casey. Appreciate that very much. And we will say goodnight to you from G&K.